guys, Comic Boom here to review the life of Captain Marvel. Margaret Stohl is giving it another kick at the cat after her series was cancelled, writing the very same character. How good a job did she do? Let's check it out. Guys, I'm going to cut right to the chase here. I really love this. This is a really great comic book. Margaret Stohl has done a really good job. And believe me, I've been very hard on Margaret Stohl. You can go back and you can look at my past reviews of Captain Marvel. There's something about Captain Marvel that I think all of us comic book readers, we want to like. We want to like Captain Marvel. And I only know that from anecdotal evidence, from talking to fellow comic collectors, and also on YouTube. I don't know what it is, but all us YouTubers, whether we're small subscriber YouTubers like myself, to the big YouTubers out there reviewing comic books, whenever Captain Marvel is reviewed, I don't know, people just seem to be fascinated with the character. She's just that popular. Now, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, Captain Marvel, despite her ongoing supposed popularity and the fact that everyone seems to be fascinated by her, the fact is that she's had a pretty rough road in the Marvel Universe, and it all flows out of Civil War II. And she's got a movie coming out, and so the pressure was on here to see, well, this Life of Captain Marvel, which was an idea what originated back when Axel Alonso was editor-in-chief, people at Marvel were really inspired by, I think, a lot of the things that Margaret Stohl was obviously talking about. Now, Margaret Stohl, the writer of Captain Marvel, her run on Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel comic book series, it wasn't particularly great. It wasn't really well received, and it was cancelled. We were told that this was going to be coming out. Now, it was interesting that they're giving Margaret Stohl another kick at the cat here, and I'm just so impressed because Margaret Stohl gives a writing. She writes on the back of this. She writes the letter in the back, and she writes quite a bit, and it's beautiful what she writes in the back. And I got to tell you, if Captain Marvel has the attitude that Margaret Stohl does, as articulated in the back here, this Captain Marvel is going to be a far more interesting character than she has been in the past. Margaret Stohl basically admits that when she first came on writing Captain Marvel, it was really her first time writing a comic book. I understand that she's written novelizations, and she's got some experience as writing for young adult novels, and I don't know if she's a good writer or not in that respect. All I know is that I was disappointed in her Captain Marvel run. But guys, this is really good. This is really good. And this comic book basically tells. It basically starts off by just talking about Carol Danvers' past. She grew up in a place called Harpsville Sound, Maine, and basically she was an abused child. Her father did beat her. She had a brother named Joe. Her father's name was Joe. Her brother was Joe Jr. She called him JJ for short. And there was domestic abuse that she had growing up, and she brought that abuse with her. And eventually, all that pent-up anger, all those residual issues that she had flowing from that abuse she suffered as a child, it slowly caught up with her. Now, why did it catch up with her at this particular time? That's part of the question, that's part of the mystery established here. Because this issue starts off with her basically fighting alongside the Avengers, not against them for a change, fighting alongside the Avengers, beating up some villains, and she kind of freaks out and she has flashbacks of when she was beaten as a child by her father. And that really sort of builds up, and it causes her to sort of hyperventilate, and she has a panic attack. And it's sort of like, I guess they called it here, it's almost like family PTSD. And what's interesting about that is, as a reader of Captain Marvel since Civil War II, I was wondering if that would explain some of her actions against Tony Stark in Civil War II. But they don't address that here. So as long-time readers, now I'm not a long-time reader, I've only been since Civil War II, but if you're looking for an explanation as to Carol Danvers' actions in Civil War II, you're not going to necessarily be satisfied with an answer here. But if we were a little bit creative, we can imagine what the answer is. The bottom line here is, for whatever reason, she begins to come to terms with the abuse that she suffered as a child, and she basically ends up going back to her hometown again to sort of come to terms with herself and try to get a handle on and take a break from superheroing. And she got that advice from, of all people, Tony Stark. Now what's interesting here is at the beginning of this, there's a conversation that she has with Tony after she almost beats to, she almost beats to death a couple of supervillains, and the Avengers kind of notice that she's taking it out pretty hard on them. And it's funny, there's a conversation between her and Tony Stark, and Tony makes the comment that that rage thing you got, is there something on your mind? I mean, Tony Stark clearly recognizes that she's dealing with something, and he never mentions the fact that he's kind of familiar with Carol Danvers having a rage problem. She has an anger problem. Carol Danvers put him into a coma and almost killed him at the end of Civil War II. So if anybody knows that Carol Danvers has an anger problem and isn't good at handling her emotions, it's Tony Stark. But that isn't mentioned here. But for what it's worth, that's my explanation for Civil War II. That's what I'm telling myself. Why? Because I need an explanation why Carol Danvers acted so crazy in Civil War II. And I love this story enough in this first issue that this is giving me an explanation. I'm just going to creatively read in an extra bit of dialogue in here where Tony just says, look, I get it. You had some anger issues. I was the butt of that anger at one point. You need to go deal with it now. Deal with it now before you end up hurting somebody even more than you hurt me. So that's the explanation. I can read in an explanation for what happened in Civil War II there, albeit I'm reading that in. That is not explicitly explained here. There's no question that I think Marvel wants this comic book to appeal to new readers, and it will. It's that good. It's really that good. Also, to all those of you who maybe are followers of Comicsgate and you're worried about that elusive three-letter word SJW, don't worry about it. This is a great comic book. This is just an adult woman who's coming to terms with the fact that her dad beat her when she was younger, and she's just going back home again, and there's issues she has with her little brother because her brother Joe feels that Carol left Harpswell Sound, Maine, that she left home a little that she was just running away, and in effect she was running away from the abuse, just wanting to escape, and she's been away for many years, and so when she's finally returning, there's some resentment there from her brother. Her brother is also an alcoholic, so the way that her brother likely dealt with the abuse that they suffered on the hands of their father, her brother Joe Jr., JJ, is an alcoholic, and of course Carol, obviously she internalized all that anger, and it's manifesting now with her as a superhero battling all these villains, and so it's something that she's got to deal with. What makes this particularly more heartfelt and more emotional is the fact that her brother, they end up having an argument, and her brother is drunk, and she watches as her brother basically drives away drunk, and he ends up into an accident, and he ends up with potentially some brain damage, and she spends 9 months in here basically staying at home. She gives up superheroing by basically staying and living with her mother while her brother Joe recovers in the hospital. And the art here is fantastic. The Margaret's the artist. Sorry, this is another one of those comic books which always picks the middle of the comic book for some reason to indicate who wrote the damn thing. Margaret Stohl obviously is the writer. The artist, Margaret Savage, Margaret Savage has done a lot of, she did a lot of the art for DC Bombshells. She does the flashback sequences, which are really good, and Carlos Pacello did the present day scenes. Did a really good job here. Basically, when Carol is, as Carol spends basically 9-10 months waiting for her brother to heal, and she refuses to leave home. She refuses to leave her mother. Even her mother wants her to leave already and say, go be a superhero, do what you got to do, don't worry about your brother, you can't, stop feeling so guilty, because she feels guilty that she left her brother to fend for himself, and he got into that accident, and so she feels guilty about that. And in any event, Tony Stark keeps looking in on her, saying, look, we need your help, get over this, we need you back, get your mojo back, come on, come back into the swing of things. And as it turns out, she refuses. She wants to stay. She wants to meet her brother Joe as he comes back from the hospital, recovered from the accident. And she stumbles across something in the closet as she's tidying things up, and it's a note, and she discovers that her father had an affair. and that her father, this man that she remembers as being very abusive and that she highly resents and that she clearly still has issues with as an adult and hasn't addressed those things and internalized all that anger. She clearly is surprised by this, and she finds a computer she finds some sort of computer module of some kind, and I'm not really sure why, but she tries opening it up with a hammer of all things, which seems rather odd. But in any event, she triggered something, and a very odd thing happens. A beam shoots out of it, and apparently it triggers conception. It triggers the birth of a life form, and which appears to be of Cree origin. And I'm not really sure what's going on here, but it seems that whatever her father was keeping in a box, her father was keeping love letters that he wrote to to someone he called his soulmate, not her mother, not Carol's mother. So her father was having an affair, but also there's this device which at the end of the comic triggers the conception and birth of a life form, which appears to be of, I'm guessing, a combination of Cree and human DNA. And so where is this heading? I'm not really sure, but it's very interesting. What is Carol's true origins now? Very interesting. I don't know where this is going to go, but man, I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. And what I really love is, and her hair is growing. They're going to grow her hair out, so she's not going to have this, the short hairstyle looks good. I'm not going to say it looks bad or anything, but I think some artists, they're better at drawing a feminine Carol Danvers when she has longer hair. So I think strategically, artistically, it's a good idea to let her hair grow out a little bit longer, because her hair starts off like that, and by the end of the comic, her hair, it's just longer, and she's sitting there with Tony Stark, and she's got some longer hair, and I think it looks more like the traditional classic Carol Danvers, which we all know and love. And overall, I gotta say I'm impressed with this. I think I can read it, and I'm satisfied that I have enough of an explanation that I can at least tacitly understand some of her anger issues that she manifested in Civil War II. And this is a good fresh story that you can give to a newbie reader and simply sit back and enjoy it. So guys, pick up Captain Marvel 2. To Margaret Stohl, I say thank you. You've done a fantastic job on this. I'm going to forget all that you previously wrote. This is really, really good. You deserve accolades for this, Margaret Stohl. This is a good job. And until next time, Comic Boom, out.